All right, so notes 2.7, fraction slopes with tables. First thing you should always remember is that all slopes are fractions. Okay. Then what that means is that the top of the fraction is the math for y, and the bottom of the fraction is the math for x's. Okay, so top is y and bottom is x's. And another thing you should note, in case you didn't, is that this line here is the fraction bar. Okay, sorry for my handwriting today. Now later, the top of the fraction will tell you to go up or down. The bottom of the fraction will tell you to go right or left. Okay, and this other side here is for when we are graphing. All right. So let's go forth and look at some more. So we have some examples here. Y equals 2x minus 1. Our y-intercept is -1, and then our slope is 2. So what does that mean? Well, on my table here, at time 0, we'll have that -1. As we go down our table, we will be adding by 2. Okay, so that means that we're going to have 1 and 1, and then we'll have 2 and 3. When we go upwards, we'll have -3, and then upwards again, we will have -5. Okay, now notice here too, as we go down on our x side, we're adding by 1s. Okay, so when we rewrite slope as a fraction, it's 2 over 1. And then this 1 at the bottom here, is the math we did for our x's. This 2 on the top here is the math we did for our y's. So we have always been using fraction slopes. We just didn't realize we were using fraction slopes, even back when we were doing arithmetic. So looking at the next one here, we have y equals -3x plus 19. We got 19. Our slope is -3. So I'm starting with a positive 19 at time 0. And as I go down my table, we are subtracting 3. So at time 1, we have 16. At time 2, we have 13. At time -1, we have 22. At time -2, we have 25. Okay. Now again, we were adding by 1s here. We just never talked about it. So when we write it as a fraction, we were doing -3 over 1. Again, the bottom of your fraction, the denominator, is the math for x's. The numerator, that -3, is the math for our y's, right? So if you want to help remembering the denominators for x's like to dominate. So we got we have y equals 1/2 x plus 1. So our y-intercept is that positive 1. So I have a 1 for my zeros here. My slope is going to be 1 over 2. Okay? So what's going to happen is we're going to take our calculators. Okay, so now that I have the calculator pulled up, okay, this 1/2 is our common difference. So this is the math that we're going to do down our table, right? We're going to add 1/2. So I'm going to do 1 plus, to make a fraction, alpha y equals, hit enter, and there's your fraction. And that gives us 3/2. So let me write that in my table. We got 3/2. Now, 3/2, I'm going to hit the up arrow, hit enter, and it copies that down. So plus 1 over 2, and that gives us 2. That's a nice number. So what I want to do is I'm going to box that nice number in. I'm going to box that in. And why don't we box our y-intercept? Because that's a nice number. Okay, let's look at 3. So 2 plus 1/2 is 5/2. So let's write in 5/2. That's not a nice number. We're not going to box that in. 5/2 plus a fraction of 1/2 gives us 3. So I have 3. That's a nice number. Let's box that in. So looking at this now, okay, what math do we do to get from 0 to 2 and 2 to 4? Well, we're going to add by 2, right? Because we only want to deal with nice numbers. We don't want to deal with fractions. What about from 1 to 2, 2 to 3? We are adding by 1s. Well, why don't we look at our slope here? Looking at our slope here, here's that positive 1 in the numerator. Here's that positive 2 in the denominator. And see how we were adding by 1 and adding by 2? So if I go upwards on my table, where are my next nice numbers going to be at? Well, the next nice number is going to be at -2 and -4. If I go backwards by 2 on my table, those would be my next numbers. If I go backwards for my y's, we were adding 1 as we went down the table. So if we go backwards, we got 0 and we got -1. So when I fill out my simplified table here, we got -4, -1, -3, 0. We have 2, 2, and 4, 3. So again, I got those numbers from my expanded table. Like how we did expanded before, we will do expanded again just for these few. So we're adding by 1 on the on the y side, adding by 2 on the x side. So let's look at number 4 here. So our y-intercept, we have y equals 2/3 x plus 1. Our y-intercept's 1. Our slope is 2/3. Let's look at our tables. So I know for both my tables, I'm going to have a 1 for our y-intercept at 0. So this means as we go down our table, our slope, 2/3, is technically what we'll be adding. So we're technically adding by 2/3. So we're going to have 1 plus 2/3 is 5/3. So we got 5/3. That's not a nice number. Then we have 5/3 plus 2/3 is 7/3. And from here on out, I'm not going to use the calculator anymore. Okay, you should be able to use the calculator or to at least follow along. So then we have 3, which is a nice number, so let's box that in. And let's box in that y-intercept nice number. Then we'll have 11/3. Then we'll have 13/3. And then we'll have 5, which is a nice number, so we'll box that in. So looking at this, we have for the for the y's, we were adding by 2. For the x's, we were adding by 3 as we go down to these nice numbers, okay? So we see those, that +3 and that +2, in our slope, right? Here's that +2 up top. Here's that +3 on the bottom. So when I go backwards on my table, instead of dealing with all these ugly fractions, we can actually figure out which of our x's would be next. Well, if I'm adding by 3 to get to my next nice number on the x side, when I would subtract by 3 on my x side to figure out where the next nice number is, right? Then, if I'm adding by 2 as I go down, I'll subtract 2 to go up. So 1 minus 2 is -1. -1 minus 2 is -3. So I have my simplified version with just the nice numbers all ready to go. Then we have 3 and 3, we have 6 and 5. So still, even in this simplified version, we are adding by 2 as we go down and adding by 3. And again, that +3 is for the bottom of our fraction. That's the math for x. The top of our fraction is the math for y, and that's where we get the +2. All right. Let's look at number 5. So now we have y equals -3x plus 1. Our y-intercept is 1. Our slope is -3 over 4. Write it how you say it. Negative 3/4 x, negative 3 over 4. You only want to have that negative once. If you have it twice, it becomes something totally different. Our simplified table is 1 at times 0, and same with our expanded because that's our y-intercept. Okay. In our expanded table, we are technically going to be subtracting 3/4 because that's our slope, aka our common difference. I'm not going to use the calculator now. If you want to, you can, but that leaves us with 1/4. Then we have negative 1/2. Then we'll have negative 5/4. Then we'll have negative 2, and here we have a nice number, so we'll box that in. And let's box in our y-intercept too. After negative 2, subtract 3/4, and we'll have negative 11/4. Then we'll have negative 14. Oh, no, it's not going to be 14. It'll be negative 7/2 in your calculator. Then we'll have negative 17/4. And then we'll have negative 5. And we'll box that in because that's a nice number. Okay, so let's look at the numbers we have boxed in. So looking on our x side, how do we get from 0 to 4 where we have a nice number, and then 4 to 8 where we have a nice number? Well, we're adding by 4s, and we see that 4 at the bottom of our slope, right? That's the math for our x's. All right, then how do we get from this nice number 1 in our y's to this nice number negative 2? We are subtracting 3, which again, top of that slope, right? Subtracting 3. So once again, the top number is the math for your x's, for your y's. The bottom number is the math for your x's. So let's figure out where we're going to have our next set of nice numbers going upwards. Well, if I'm adding by 4 down the x side here, then my next set of nice numbers is going to be at negative 4 and then negative 8. And my nice number on the y, the partner for negative 4, well, if I'm subtracting 3 as I go down, when I go upwards, right, I'll be adding 3. So 1 plus 3 is 4. Then we'll have 7. So we have negative 8, 7, negative 4, 4, 4, negative 2, 8, negative 5 for our simplified table here. Okay. I'm sorry that my handwriting's so bad. Okay, now let's go down to number 6. So number 6, we have y equals 7/5 x minus 9, so that's negative 9. Our slope is 7/5. Okay, so we start with negative 9. Our 5 at the bottom tells us what to do for our x's, so 0 plus 5 is 5, and 5 plus 5 is 10. Going backwards, we get negative 5 and we get negative 10. The 7 here tells us what to do for y, so we're going to be adding by 7. So negative 9 plus 7 is negative 2. Negative 2 plus 7 is 5. Going backwards, we have to subtract that 7, so we get a negative 16, and then we get a negative 23. Okay? All right. Looking at 7, we have y equals negative 1/2 minus 27. Minus 27 is our slope. Negative 1/2, write it how you say it, so only attach the negative to the 1. This minus 1 is what we do for our y's. It's the top, so we have negative 27 minus 1 is negative 28. Then we have negative 29. Above that, negative 27, we'll have negative 26. Above that, we'll have negative 25. Here, this 2 is positive, so we're adding 2. 0 plus 2 is 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. 0 minus 2 is negative 2. Negative 2 minus 2 is negative 4. And there's our table. Okay, so the x's in the denominator like to dominate. X's like to dominate, so they're in the denominator. I hope that helps you remember. Now, your 8 and 9, if you got a paper for me, might be different. Because if you realize your 8 and 9 might be the same as 6 and 7. So please change 8 and 9 to these problems here. I'll help you get started, but I want you to try these on your own. So we have y equals 4x 4/3 x plus 6. So we have our y-intercept of 6 and a slope of 4/3. And in number 9, we have negative 9/7 x plus 16. Our y-intercept is 16. Our slope is negative 9/7. Write it how you say it. So pause the video. See if you can handle this on your own. Okay, so hopefully you tried, but the y-intercept here is going to be 6. We are going to be adding by 4 and then adding by 3 for our x's. So we got 3, 6, 10, 14. The ordered pair above 0, 6 is going to be negative 3 and 2, and above that will be negative 4 and negative 2. Number 9, we should have 16. Okay, and then we are adding by, we are subtracting by 9 as we go down on the y side, adding by 7s, right? X's are in the denominator because x's like to dominate. So we'll have 7 and 7 below 0, 16. Below 7, 7, we'll have 14 and negative 2. Above 0, 16, we'll have negative 7 and 25. And above that, we'll have negative 14 and 34. All right. So those are the notes for today. Here's the homework. You're going to make up 2 of your own equations with fraction slopes. That's it. Your homework is 10 and 11. All right. So have a good day. Rewatch this video as you need it. And I hopefully will see you soon.